Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
All right, and yourself?
I am well. I am well. It's another beautiful Saturday morning. I can't complain.
There you go.
All right, all right. Well, let's get into it. Welcome back to the Saturday morning tea. And this is the sip of tea edition, a little abbreviated, just a little sip of tea today, where we serve up the real talk our profession needs. I'm Clarice Warner, the girl with the pearls, with my partner in success, Mr. Jesse, the registered trademark. Put some respect on his name, the coding nurse. So pour yourself a fresh cup of whatever it is that you drink. I got tea. I got tea. Because we're about to unpack a case that's brewing controversy in healthcare circles. So as you come in, don't forget to hit the thumbs up or like button. And remember, you can be part of the conversation by placing your questions or comments in the chat. We invite all opinions, and your opinions matters here. The only thing we ask is that you put a Q first so that we know that it's actually a question for us and we don't miss it. So today, Mr. Jesse will lead our discussion. Yay, yay. Um, Mr. Jesse, would you like to introduce yourself before I go into the topic, or you want me just to tell the topic and you can just run away?
Well, since it's an abbreviated show, I don't have to.
Okay. So today's topic: 15 nurses fired. HIPAA versus speaking out about patient care. All right, Mr. Jesse, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, so this story comes out of Washington, and I first found out about it through Becker's. Um, they really do keep their ear to the ground.
Sir, all the different Becker's articles
Yes.
or publications. Yes.
And this is really a sad article about it's just a whole it's just
A mess.
Yes, I mean it's just bad all the way around, and the story is last April, a 12-year-old young lady who had been having mental health issues and had been receiving ongoing treatment for suicidal ideation. In April, last April, she managed to uh, walk off her adolescent psych unit and found her way to the fourth floor parking garage of the hospital. And she jumped off and ended up dying as a result of her injuries.
Mhm.
So the hospital, which is Providence Sacred Heart Medical Center and Children's Hospital, they launch an investigation and they find that actually is 16 nurses were impacted, 15 were fired, and one was reprimanded for accessing this young lady's medical records. And as a result, and they were not terminated until this month, I
Mm,
believe. Yeah. So, because they had an investigation.
mhm.
And of course, the family has launched a lawsuit because the mother is asserting that she was not known, she didn't know that her daughter's status had been changed, because normally when somebody is on what they call like, well, suicide precaution. I used to say suicide watch, but when you have suicide precautions, they usually, you have to lay eyes on them 24 hours, 24/7. Like they are usually not allowed to even be alone, let alone be able to be able to get, gain exit from the unit. So the mother is asserting, because according to the protocol, she was supposed to have a video monitor, she was supposed to have a door alarm, and a round the clock sitter. So
Mm,
all three of those did not, none of the three were in place. And her mother said that she didn't know that the status was changed until after her daughter unfortunately took her life. So the nurses were fired from the hospital for a HIPAA violation for accessing this young lady's medical records. So the nurses then reached out to the Washington State Nurses Association, and they are claiming that they are being retaliated against because they spoke to the media. And I'm like, well, where does that happen? Because customarily, like, I know I've worked places that, well, almost everywhere, and especially nowadays, you have a media policy that you have to sign off when you're hired, and that is the policy just simply states that you don't speak about anything going on in the hospital. If media contacts you, you refer them to
To the
the
media department,
part
the spoke
exactly.
app. Yes, absolutely.
And I'm like, so I it's just this case has a lot of moving parts, and I feel sorry for the young lady who took her own life, because there was definitely a breakdown in the system somewhere for that to happen. So I'm just curious, but the article goes on to say, and the article is going to be linked in the description, right?
Yes, it is.
Right. So the article goes on to say that the union, of course, is asserting that they didn't do anything wrong, but one of them is saying that they're not sure if it's a HIPAA violation. So I mean, we know, first of all, we know that there are a lot of people in healthcare who have been fired for accessing people's records when they're not supposed to, and we know that HIPAA has very, very strict laws, especially the privacy rule.
Mm-hmm.
You are not allowed to. That's like the first thing that comes to mind is the minimum necessary. Like,
Correct.
why are you even accessing it? Like, what reason do you have to be looking at this record?
Correct.
And nowadays in this electronic environment, they can tell everything about who accessed, where you were, what time you did it, whether you were in the hospital, whether you were outside the hospital. They can tell exactly who accesses what, when, why, and how. So I just don't understand how that has gotten lost, because how is it that, because I'm like, I couldn't find any information, because I'm like, well, did 15 nurses talk talk to the media, or were the ones who talked to the media just part of the 15? I, it's still some moving parts, because what I do know for sure, or what I have a strong suspicion of, is I know that whatever media outlet they spoke to didn't know that they worked at that hospital and were involved in some way, shape, or form, or had access to this young lady's medical records. So I believe, in my opinion, I believe that somebody reached out and started talking, or somebody's.
Yeah, well, in the article, it said something about um, the nurses, that nurses spoke anonymously to, I'm trying to find it, to the media outlet. And then as a result, they suspected nurses, I guess, um, were then called in to meetings to get an understanding of what happened or what was said. And I think that's how they kind of determined who, who talked to the media and their role in it. Um, the crazy part to me, well, one of the things that I'm unclear about in this whole story, um, particularly as they are discussing um, HIPAA violations, were these, because they're trying to say they were doing it, they were accessing the record due to what happens in crisis situations, emergency department, all of these people. And I understand that because then, you're well in your reins for accessing those records if you're part of the team that's involved with the treatment um, and care of this patient. But it's somewhere underlying to me, it seems as if these records were accessed after the fact.
That's what I'm kind
And I'm like, so the fight with the union speaks to, oh, well, they have a right because of this, that, and the third, accessing, their treatment, they're part of the treatment teams and all of this. But it reads as if this actually occurred after the fact, which is very much a HIPAA breach, unless, and there's some caveats for um under HIPAA what can actually happen. So, as you know, with the privacy rule, there are some permitted uses and disclosures, and most of them are part of treatment, um, payment, and healthcare operations. Under the, and we kind of, you treatment means you're actually actively part of the healthcare providers that are um treating the patient. So again, if all of this was happening during the treatment phase, I get it. You're supposed to be in that record, you're supposed to do what you need to do, whatever. Out the whole piece of things that didn't happen according to their policy and the level of care that that child was supposed to receive, that in and of itself, if it didn't happen and it was is documented it happened, I understand that investigation, I understand all of that. um but it's the after the fact piece that to me is where there has to be some established policies as well as some established reasons for what's happening. And I think that's where the gray. So with healthcare operation, and Mr. Jesse, were you going, if you were going to talk about this, I will.
No, go.
Okay. So under the healthcare operations piece, um, they would be considered like your quality assessment and improvement activities, including case management and care coordination, competency assurance activities, including provider or health plan performance evaluation, credentialing, and accreditation, conducting or arranging for medical reviews, audits, or legal services, including fraud and abuse detection and compliance programs, specify insurance functions, which doesn't have to do with it, but such as underwriting, risk rating, and reinsuring risk, business planning, development, management, and administration, and business management and general administrative activities of the entity, including but not limited to de-identifying protected health information, creating a limited data set, and certain fundraising for the benefit of the covered entity. Now, I can see where this may have, but even further, we got to take into account if she's having mental health challenges, then you got a whole other set of privacy rules that are applicable in that realm, and they're even more tighter and stricter than your typical HIPAA laws. But so if it was after the fact and they were doing like the health, so the quality assessment, improvement, so that part I understand, but that's not, no one is saying that that was what was happening. It seems like, oh, well, unfortunately, she passed away. Either one or two things happened. Let's be for real. Let's be clear. They either looking in trying to see what happened to cover themselves. Like, did this say this? Was I supposed to do this? Especially considering that things that were supposed to happen didn't. And two, they was just being nosy, especially after the fact. If it was during the what was happening, I understand that. After the fact, if Providence had this policy, as most facilities do, it's cut and dry. Sorry.
That's the same thing I thought. I'm like, I have, because it just goes to show you, because let this be a lesson. Anonymous is not anonymous.
No. No.
And I still I I believe that somebody or somebodies reached out to the media, because how would they even know how to find those people? That's not public information anywhere. Now your occupational licenses are a public record, but it doesn't say where you work.
Mm, yeah, it's crazy. I'm trying
It
to find the
is.
little line where it talked about, did he
Because
talk to
it's
them? Uh,
because she had been the young lady had been receiving treatment off and on starting in 2024, but she had been in the facility since January of
mhm.
this year. And what I'm trying to understand is even the mother, because when you went to see your child, if you didn't see anybody in the room when you got there, I don't know how you don't know that your child doesn't have a 24-hour sitter.
Absolutely. And she had been there all of this time. At some point, and I don't want to come off as I'm blaming, shaming, or any of those things, but someone needed to advocate for that child. Period. And understanding, the care coordination, understanding what's happening, understanding what's supposed to happen, what's not supposed to happen, all of that. Someone had a responsibility or duty to make sure that her guardians, parents, whoever was responsible for her was informed and understood what the expectation was and what they planned to do. Um that whole, she was supposed to have the sitter, she was supposed to have alarms, she was supposed to have, uh, now that's an easy fix. And if and I don't know about, I know a little bit about adult facility, it's on lock. Most pediatric ones are on lock too. So even if she got out her room, how'd she get off the floor? Like,
Right.
it's on, like, I quite honestly, I would be nervous when I would have to go on those, because you locked in. It's like, well, wait a minute. In my mind, well, what would happen if something pop off in here? I can't get out. You know what I'm saying? So even if those things that were supposed to be provided for her, just for her, fail, what about the floor itself? And not only the protection of the patient, which is the utmost crucial part of this situation, but the protection of others. She was only interested in hurting herself, but what if you had someone who was interested in hurting others? And if
Exactly.
those pieces fail on the individual, you also have pieces that fail outside of that individual. So I think with some of these investigations, I mean, I'm sure this is going to be a quite an extensive investigation, not only of the people involved, but the system involved. Um, they said that the hospital started looking, they start doing their audit of who assessed the medical records after the first story of the on the girl's suicide was published um by Investigate West. So it said the nurses who were quoted anonymously, um my quotes, not in the story,
Mm.
in those reports, were then asked in a closed door meetings whether they had spoken to the media and later fired. So again, it's did they assess these records after the fact? Or did they assess these records during the treatment? And that part is not that's not clear to me. It seems like an after the fact, but again,
It does.
it's not clear. And if it's an after effect, I don't know how much ground you really have to stand on unless there is some documentation that the reason why you were in this record falls within whatever Provident Sacred Heart's policies are related to that. And it don't sound that way
Because
at all.
I just think that their whole premise is flimsy, because when you sit when they're saying that they had a right to access the records during a crisis, um, you didn't even know it was a crisis until she was found out on the ground. Because the thing is, like, like, I mean, in psych, people don't they wear regular clothes.
Mhm.
So, but I'm still trying to understand, wouldn't you think that, because she had to leave her unit, because they don't even give any kind of um idea of where her unit was in relation to the fourth floor parking garage. So how is a person, a child at that,
A
walking around the
child.
hospital with an armband, whether you have regular clothes on or not, on an arm with an armband, and nobody notices?
Yeah.
Because it's not like, trust me, I do not believe that that child knew exactly where to go. She wandered around and found it. They don't give any kind of, see, well, I'm sure the hospital knows, but when was she last documented as being seen? What was the last
Right.
entry?
Right.
And then because that gives you the timeline of how long possibly she had been wandering around before she was actually found outside. It's
Mhm.
just it's And I'm sure it wasn't until they they brought her into the ER and they saw her armband that they realized, oh my God, she's a patient.
Mm.
It's
That's a
crazy.
lot. That's
It's
a lot.
unfortunate, yes.
And so the other spin on this from the nurses' perspective and the nurses union is that they were trying to speak out regarding the safety concerns of the facility, of the hospital. And that
I don't believe that.
that's that's real slippery because again, there are policies and procedures in place on how to do that. Going directly to the media is not step one at all. Um, but then there was also like a whistleblower implication type of situation. So again, if and I for me, Clarice, if I'm going to that level of extreme, one, I'm not talking to somebody who, i.e., media, who's going to potentially ruin whatever type of case I personally may have if it's a whistleblower situation. I'm talking to the people who can directly impact one, what I'm trying to say has happened or didn't happen. Um, but I'm also going to make sure that all the steps were taken. I talked to somebody, I notified somebody, it's clearly documented that this happened. I talked to so and so on this, that, all of the things that led up to that. And then when things, and I think for me, and then I gotta remember I have a compliance lens that I'm looking at in hindsight. She's been here long enough that if things weren't going right, this just didn't happen that day. Let's just
No,
say that this didn't just
no.
happen that day. So if things were going awry this entire time, then there should be some documentation of what was supposed to happen, what didn't happen, da 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 da. And so if you were concerned about the safety of this patient or other patients like her, there should be some documentation about some conversations related to that as well. And so if it's a whistleblower type situation, you contact the attorney, not the hospital, your attorney, not the hospital attorney. You contact your people so y'all can have a conversation of how to navigate these waters. And going to the media is not it. So uh, that it was patient safety, possibly a whistleblower. I'm don't smell right to me.
Oh, I agree because that whole like because that goes into one of the like they have this premise that nurses are supposed to be advocates for their patients. Okay, I can see that in theory, but there's a way to advocate. And going to the media after somebody has an unfortunate end is not how you advocate. Because I have advocated for for patients I've taken care of, but what I've done is I pulled, because every family has like the one person that's in charge.
Right.
I have pulled people aside, like, listen, you need to ask the doctor about such and such because this is what's going on when you're not here. Or because the one lady, I think I might have shared this before, like she was on blood pressure medicine, but her blood pressure wasn't being controlled. And I told her daughter, I said, you need to ask them because I would have to check her blood pressure before I gave her medicine, and it was too high for it to be, even though she's on medicine, I'm like, it's not being controlled. Well, she did have the conversation, and they didn't really do anything. And a couple of weeks later, the lady had a stroke.
Mm, mm.
But at but at no point did I ever think, well, let me contact the media and say
No.
anonymously.
No. No, 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 no. That's crazy. That whole part is crazy to me.
It is.
Mm-mm-mm.
And how you, I just don't, I just want to know because I have an idea of how, but I just want to know, how can you as a nurse really believe that you're being fired for speaking to the media, and you think it's okay? Like, you really think that you want somebody's going to fight for you, that you're going to be able to keep your job? You really think that?
And this nurses association, boy. Did y'all get the facts? I'm trying to understand. Like, I'm all for supporting our members. I get it. I understand that they pay good money to be part of this association, and you support. I get that. But make sure for me, I would make sure that I had all facts before was rah-rah. Because sometimes you may have to rein that in and then have a conversation with your members to get them to understand this is how these things are supposed to happen. This is the way in which you do this. There's a right and a wrong way to do almost everything. This one just seems a little wrong.
All the way around. And I'm just like, how, I mean, at what point do you just realize, or can you internally say, I effed up? Because that you can't justify this one no kind of way.
Mhm.
I just don't see or know how you can do that.
Yeah, that's true. Did you had any other things to add? I don't want to steal your thunder.
No.
This is your case today. So,
No, but I just thought it was very interesting. Just it's sad, but what was
very
interesting to
sad.
me
Very
was
sad.
their defense. And that's almost just as sad as what happened, because I'm like, you're really trying to justify your foolishness? Because that's what it feels like to me. You just try, and 15, because then I'm thinking like 15 of y'all, like, Okay, she's been there since January. She really could have that. And they were all nurses. That's the part that gets me. It wasn't like it was other team members.
Mm-mm.
Wasn't like it
Mm-mm.
was it was a social worker, you know, strictly nurses.
And it just smells of maybe the violation or things that were supposed to happen or didn't happen was a result of your nursing team. And so maybe that's the let's rally around and do what we need to do for us. Maybe. I don't know. I just it's all bad. And you know, I, and I would think like, and I'm not certain whether or not, because I haven't, this was my first time even seeing this story when you sent it to me. I can only imagine for that family, you're already, you've dealt with for a long time the mental challenges of your child and trying to get them the help and doing what you think is the right thing to do and all of the things. And then the unfortunate activities happen under the care of where you had your child placed or whatever. So you wrestling with all of that and the grief and the loss of that child. But then to hear about it all over again, and this is just the family aspect of it is just disheartening to me. Like that's it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a
It
whole lot.
is.
Mm-mm-mm. But I think so. Sometimes I think we kind of overcomplicate the things in healthcare when sometimes the stuff is right there in front of us. And to me, this could all be so simple. if, and I want to say this probably happened or has happened, but just didn't happen. There were established clear crisis protocols that define who can access records during the emergency and then for how long after an event. Because it just because, an event occurred, in this case, the death of the patient, you don't get carte blanche after the fact, even though it happened in your no. So that yeah, there needs to be some product protocols and policies around that. Creating a safe reporting channel that protects employees who raise legitimate safety concerns. Again, that's where I'm talking about. There should be, you need to talk to the people, and the media is not the people to
But
understand or to be able to do anything about what may have happened.
but also what I'm trying to understand is like I could not see any safety protocols that they were allegedly trying to go to the press about. Like the press is not saying what these alleged safety concerns, what their issues were. So that's why I'm like I don't believe most of it. I don't believe it. I think that they were, telling tales out of school and they had no business.
Yeah. After the event, I think they should have conducted some real-time audits. I would think you would still, because they were trying to say, was it right or wrong or what indifferent for them to conduct the audits after they heard the press? Well, that's a time to do it too. But I think you do it in both instances, like immediately following, because then people may be slipping and dipping or whatever. But then when you heard this, that information came from people who worked in this facility. That's a low hanging fruit. Find out who been here. That's low hanging fruit. Making sure that your managers have been trained to distinguish between legitimate concern and inappropriate curiosity. Implement transparent policies about what constitutes appropriate record access during crisis response, and protected whistleblowers who speak out about patient safety rather than hunting them down. But again, in this case, I don't know if that's really what is happening. I still think it's a CYA type of
Mhm.
situation.
Because also, and what's also interesting that because it's just there's a lot of missing parts to this whole thing, but we also know that just doing reviews when you, especially because it's in certain, I know in New Jersey it's like this.
Mhm.
When you go to access, because it's one thing to log into Epic or whatever your EHR is, but when you go to access specifically mental health records, there is another layer of
Mhm.
security that you have to attest what you were using it for.
Mhm.
Why are you accessing this information, and what is your
Mhm.
role that you
Mhm.
have to put in to even gain access?
Mhm.
So no, no.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think all most of this could have been, or in the future, these situations could be prevented entirely if there are clear policies, proper training, and a culture um, of compliance. I mean, to me, really, it could be all that simple. Just you know, handle that, handle things the way in there which they're supposed to be handled in all of in all of that. So as we finish today's tea, couple of things. I want you to think about your own workplace. Do you know your rights when it comes to HIPAA compliance? Are you clear on what constitutes appropriate record access in your role? You should be very clear. So here's some call to action things for you. First, review your facility's HIPAA policies and not just the annual training that you click through and say you did with that little assessment at the end. No, but the actual procedures for, especially in a crisis situation, but just period. Second, know your union rights or employee handbook policies about reporting safety concerns. I'm sure it doesn't say go to the media. I'm not even a gambling woman, but I gamble everything I own. Knowledge is power, and you can't protect yourself if you don't know the rules. Third, if you're in a leadership position, audit your own practices. Are your HIPAA policies realistic for actual patient care scenarios? And are you creating an environment where staff feel safe raising concerns? Finally, share this episode with a colleague who needs to hear it. Whether you're a team lead or a new grad, understanding these issues protects both you and your patients. Mhm. All right. Mr. Jesse, you have any other final words?
No. It's
No?
just sad. It's not going to bring this young lady back, uh
No.
but her mother will be taken care of.
Oh, absolutely. And I hope that if there are things that have fallen through the cracks, um, and if there are some valid safety concerns, then I hope those things are addressed for future patient care. Um, because, yeah, that's scary.
It
That's scary.
is.
Well, remember, we're not just coding diagnoses, we're advocating for safe, ethical healthcare. So until next Saturday morning, keep steeping in knowledge and brewing positive change. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and follow us on our social medias for more healthcare insights served with a side of common sense. Because that's what we do. I'm Clarice Warner, the girl with the pearls, and we've heard extensively today with Mr. Jesse, the coding nurse. And this has been the Saturday morning tea. Remember, be safe, be kind, and don't wish for it, work for it. Until next time, take care. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.